guess recording has started. So welcome everyone, right, to this meetup. So Derek and myself, we are going to have this three series running, right? So today we are basically going to talk more about the AAP 2 itself, which is the Ansible Automation Platform 2, followed by some demos around the Ansible Navigator and the builder itself, right? So for next week, we will touch more on the controller, right, which is what Tower is being renamed to, the UI piece. And I think on the third session, our plan is to do a Ask Me Anything, whereby we will invite the business unit from Red Hat side to join the session, whereby we can, discuss about what are the stuff that you guys are interested in, things like perhaps migration, upgrades, and all those things from the previous platform, right? So Derek, over to you.
Hey, thanks. So if you're not aware, right, so we are from the Red Hat APAC team, right? Anthony himself is covering the global emerging markets, right, the GEMS region, and myself, I'm covering the Singapore region itself. So if any questions, definitely you can always contact us, right, or go to your respective Red Hat stakeholders or account reps itself, right, your contact with. So what we will talk about, right? As what Anthony mentioned, we're going to go through, what has been said within AnsibleFest itself. Just general topics on what are the changes, right? We'll go a bit deeper into that. And then we will go and start off, with a few demos, right? Because I mean, we are all technical folks here. Most of us are technical folks. We want to see, what is the newest thing, right, that we have put out there today. So today's session itself is only 1 hour, so we can't cover all the features, right? But we're going to cover the first two features, which is Ansible Navigator as well as Ansible Builder, right? There's also some stuff that you also will see, right? Like some things like the execution environments, as well as potentially the automation hub, as well as the Ansible controller itself, which is a new name scheme from Ansible Tower, which we'll go through later on. We'll leave some time for Q&A, right? If there are any follow-up questions after that, right? Of course, through the session itself, if you are not talking, right, please put yourself on mute, right, and unmute yourself if you choose to ask a question or put it in the chat, right? Anthony will be also available to answer that question, or we can take that question in the Q&A as well. Okay, so Ansible Automation Platform, or Ansible itself, has actually gone through a few iterations in terms of what the name scheme, and over the years itself, right, it generally moved from Ansible to Ansible Tower, and then now we have Ansible Controller, and it became very confusing, right? Red Hat itself, what we have done is we have placed the entire components of what Ansible platform brings today, right, and change it to its AAP, right, in short, right, AAP 2.0. So moving forward, every single component that you see today that we are showing, right, will be under the umbrella of Ansible Automation Platform 2.0, right? If you were to do it and download it in open source, right, it's all individual components in its own right. Right, so later I'll go through what are these components itself. So in general, what we are trying to say is that Red Hat's offering today is a big umbrella itself that contains all the different components that you see in the open source community. So previously, what is done is that previously the platform, how it works is there's a web UI, there's an API capabilities, role-based access control, and everything that is there, and that is under the platform. And it's running using virtual environments, right, to execute the playbooks itself. Red Hat, over time, we realized that it is very monolithic. I realized that it is difficult to scale, right, and if you have a very rigid architecture. Meaning that today, if, for example, if you want to push updates of certain modules or certain content itself, we realize that it is maybe a half a year life cycle, half a year cycle in terms of how we push our updates. And now generally we want to be even faster in terms of how we push our updates to our customers today, to the people today, because that waiting 6 months is something that we see that is not viable moving forward and is not scalable as well. So what we have done is that over time we have actually move away from or break away Ansible engine, right, and segregate it into a few portions. So one of the things that we have segregated out from Ansible engine is this thing called Ansible core component. So the Ansible core component now is it's a more lightweight, and it contains only the core Ansible modules, right, for it to run more I would say things like utility modules or certain cloud modules as well as under the core components. So this core components is more lightweight, right? It's more easier to be utilized and also to be patched as well. On top of that, right, what we have broken away from the core component is the modules. So typically last time when you were to use Ansible Engine 2.8, 2.7, 2.6, 2.9, right, it has all the modules that you see today in our documentation, all bundled within the Ansible Engine, right, and the core component. So it has the core component as well as the modules for the older Ansible Engine 2.9. Moving forward, the Ansible Engine 3 and Ansible Engine 4, right? Anthony, you correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's Ansible Engine 3 and Ansible Engine 4.
Yeah,
It-
it's actually mapped
yeah.
in a way. So right now, I think most of you guys are familiar with Engine 2.9. So we will, moving forward, it's basically, if you look at the documentation today, right, you see Ansible 4. That's actually the Ansible Core 2.11. So 3 was actually Core 2.10. So there is some changes in the mapping itself.
Yeah.
But it's basically Core 2.11 that we will be talking about today.
Yes. So the core component has, or the Ansible Engine component is broken up into two parts, right? One is the modules as well as the Ansible core. So we have retained the Ansible core, right? The modules is now the updates of it will be pushed via the Ansible Galaxy itself or via our Ansible Automation Hub, right, which is in a cloud. That allows the partners that we work with, like Amazon, like Microsoft, like Cisco, for them to push all these updates directly to these collections, right, and maintain it as a repository for them to update subsequently. So it doesn't have to be dependent on the current engine, right? They just need to make sure that it works with our current engine, right? Previously, we have to wait for all the partners to push the updates and make sure that everything works together. Then we push as one big update. So now is everybody will have his own update lifecycle and how they do their patching and so on and so forth. So it's easier to maintain it that way and scale as well. So besides the Ansible core component that has changed, right, we have also changed how we run playbooks as well, and that is the Ansible Navigator, which later we will show, right, how we will run playbooks. And then we have slightly more developer tools today. So reason being is that we have moved from a execution via the Python virtual environment. We have moved executing via as a container itself. So today, if you were to execute playbooks, right, you'll be using Podman, right, underlying, right, to execute as a container, run it as a container. So that if you only run as a container, means that we need to build the container image itself, and that's where Ansible Builder is coming in, right? Ansible Builder is there to build the container image, right, for the Podman to run, right? We have Ansible Test and Molecule and Ansible Lean to help with the in terms of how developers are able to develop all these playbooks itself to see whether if there's any issues, right, with the syntax, right, within the playbooks itself as well. Once the image is built, right, the image is called the execution environment, which you see on the right side. So developer tools on the left, on the right side, the execution environment, right, will be run with Ansible Navigator. So later we will show a short demo on how Ansible Navigator will be used in this situation itself. This container image itself can be pushed to any container registry, right? Automation Hub itself has its own container registry as well, right, which you can use as well if you don't have an existing container registry. Another thing is that the Ansible Tower component, right, the name has changed to Ansible Controller. Where the reason of the change is that we want to be more in line with what we push today with AWS. And with Ansible Controller itself today, right, because of the change, now we are able to run Ansible on OpenShift itself, which is our container orchestration platform, right? So Kubernetes container orchestration platform. So we're able to run Ansible on OpenShift today much more easily. And today you can run it as an operator as well, right? Via operator, meaning that it's much more seamless in terms of deployment as well as running within OpenShift. Right, so Ansible Automation Platform, that is what the overall core components is, that's under the umbrella itself. So as I went through, right, Ansible Automation Controller, the controller itself is basically a name change from Ansible Tower itself. So later we can show you the UI, right? Relatively similar, right? The only thing is a bit of difference of the backdrop and so on and so forth. So overall, we also bring everything else like Ansible Builder that does the command line to build the container itself, Ansible Navigator to execute the image, as well as run playbooks as well. And there are many other core components as you see here, right? I won't need to go through everything because today we're just focusing on the Ansible Builder as well as Navigator itself. Right, as I mentioned, Ansible Automation Platform, now today you can run it as an operator, right, within OpenShift, and something that you can manage much more easily as well if you want to use Ansible within a Kubernetes solution. Right, Python virtual environment, realize that it's not very scalable, right? It's unique to a single system, right? It's very hard to replicate, right? Meaning that, for example, today, if you were to develop locally or on local host, you have to ensure that all the dependencies are there, right? And you build with the playbooks itself. And when you want to share that playbook with the another person on another computer itself, right? The environment then needs also to have the dependencies there for it to run properly, right? And if that particular user doesn't know how to figure or install all these things, right, then it can be very difficult in terms of much more steeper learning curve. That is why with the concept of container images, right, it allows you to port over all the image itself over to that person, right, with all the dependencies all within that image. So execution environment that allows you to manage multiple Python virtual environments or multiple in terms of execution itself when you bundle in. So we're going to bundle in all the required collections, right, as well as all the dependencies, right, and it consists of the minimal Ansible version all in one single container itself. So this is how it looks like, right? What it consists within the execution environment, right? It has the universal base image, right, which is the real UBI image, right? And then it also consists of the Ansible core, right? So it's going to be the new Ansible core 3 or core 4, right? In this case, it will be 4, right? And then inside also will contain all the Python packages as well as the libraries, right, and all the dependencies needed to run the collections as well as the playbooks itself, all into one execution environment. Right, so you can put, it'll be under the requirements.yaml file, right, and then you just need to define, which are the collections that you need to use, right, and it's going to be built all within the single image itself, and that allows you to run the execution environment on the AAP platform itself. So with this execution environment, you just need to pass that execution environment to the other user, right? And he can just run it as if everything is there, right? There is no need for him to do any other development or any other changes. He can run it as is. So it's much more easier to promote as well as push all these execution environments to different people. So Ansible Builder is one of the tools that allows you to build that image itself, right? You can use Ansible Navigator as well, right? There's no issue, but Ansible Builder is one of the tools that developers use to build that image itself. Ansible Navigator, right? Content Navigator is there to help to look at all these things like documentation. It's like how we are familiar with Ansible Dash playbooks, right? How we look at the docs, right? We also look at what are the tasks in terms of the output, right? The standard out, right? Navigator allows you to do more than that, right? To have a TUI, right? TUI, right? A more I would say more responsive and much more easier way to look at all these tasks and output as well as all this documentation, which I will show more when we move to the demo. Right, so the user experience, what we want to say is that there's for in terms of Ansible Builder and Navigator, Ansible Builder allows you to create the execution environment. Ansible Navigator allows you to then execute that execution environment, right, with the playbooks that you have been developed. Or if you want to package the playbooks with the execution environment, that's also possible, and then run it in Ansible Automation Platform itself. Right, with Ansible Automation Platform, that allows you to utilize all the hosted services. Automation Hub is where we gather all the collections itself. Besides Ansible Galaxy, right, Automation Hub is where you can gather all the collections, as well as all the images of the execution environment that you can push to later on as well. If you don't have a image registry, there's also things like we had Insight. So previously it was called Automation Analytics. I believe it's called Automation Analytics, something along those lines. And now it has been rebranded to Red Insights for Ansible Automation Platform, which in a way helps to gel the entire story, right? Because we have insights for RHEL, insights for OpenShift, right? And then now we have insights for Ansible Automation Platform as well. Right, many collections, right? We split up the modules, and now it is under collections, right? And how you can, how the partners now today can update all these collections at their own pace, right? And then we don't have to be, our Ansible core today is not dependent on all these collections today, right? And that allows us to scale and develop the core Ansible component much more easily as well. So Automation Hub allows you to host all the collections, right, as well as the images as well, the execution environment images as well. And if you're running on a disconnected environment, definitely you can run it as a private Automation Hub if you choose to. Okay, so private Automation Hub, how it works is that from the internet itself, Private Automation Hub will be at the DMZ where it's going to gather all the collections itself, and then the Ansible Automation Platform within the secured LAN zone will then get the respective collections as well as execution environments from the Private Automation Hub itself, and that allows you to run it within a secured zone. Okay, another service for service catalog allows you to have a bit more self-service. It's a more simply for us is we're trying to build something a bit more simple in terms of how you're going to execute various things like self-service provisioning or requesting of certain resources is much more easier as well. So if you don't have a current service catalog they're using and you want something that is also simple and easy to use, then the cloud service is able to provide that for you. And for this, it's only limited to cloud, right? So it's on our cloud console.red.com. It's not available on premise, as in a disconnected environment today. Right, so insights for Ansible Automation Platform, it just allows you to see, what the number of jobs has been run, how many, who is running it, in terms of you can see visually how you can ensure that you're getting the best return in terms of investment as well as return of value from all your jobs that we run across multiple clusters itself. Okay, so you're going to touch on the creator experience, right? For today's session, there is the create experience. The next session that we're going to do, we're going to talk about the operate and consumption of it. So the create experience is more on the Ansible builder as well as the Ansible Navigator itself. Let me move to the slide, right? For create. Right, so create, that surrounds the automation hub as well as what are the things that you create with, right? Could be Linux modules, Windows modules, or any other modules that we have in our collections itself. So automation hub I already went through. I will show that as well. Okay, this side. So I'm going to show the Ansible Navigator, right? Later I'll pass on Anthony to show the Ansible builder portion. So let's start with Ansible Navigator. So Ansible Navigator, what you can do is that execute the playbook right with the execution environment, right? And you can see it's also much more easier to scale as well because what you can do is you can push the execution environment to the automation hub, and then other users can also consume it as well. So let me share my screen for my window. You can see it. It is the okay. So I have running on VS Code here, right? And this is my virtual machine today, and I have Ansible Navigator already installed. So Ansible Navigator itself, as I mentioned, is a 2E, right? And it allows you to, in a way, see more. I would say you are able to do more things and have more granular control in terms of how you execute playbooks today. So typically, when you execute playbooks today, you would be doing Ansible playbook, then the playbook itself, right? But today, what you can do is right with Ansible Navigator. So I already have a playbook that I've created. Right, it's more of a ping test. So I'll do an Ansible run ping test. You can see here, it's much more different in terms of how the output is, right? I can see, what is the play name, right? As well as what's the playbook name, as well as how many tasks there is. So if I press 0, right, I can go into it and then I can see, okay, so these are the different tasks within that playbook itself. So the first task, is gathering facts. Second task, ping test, and showing the ping message itself. If I want to go deeper into it, I can press 0 again. As you can see, it's in a much more readable format, right? You can see what are the different key value pairs in terms of, for example, this is the gathering facts component, right? You can see, what are the different components much more easily as well. So this is something that you can do, right? If I go to the other things like the ping test, you see what's the task, what's the action. If I go to the other stuff, right? Showing the message itself. So these are things that you can also do. So this allows you to also do things like so I look at the docs for pin modules, right? I can look at the documentation much more easily as well. If, however, you choose to still want that output, right? For example, the old output itself, I can run it as a standard out, right? And you will still give me the same output, right? So no, it's either way, right? If you choose to do using Ansible Navigator using the TUI, right, or doing via standard out, right? So you can do either way. Um, One of the things that for Ansible Navigator that I should also point out in terms of if you were to start playing around with it is that when you do the Ansible Navigator YAML file, right? It's best to save your because every time you run the Navigator command, there is an artifact that is being created as well as the logs that's been created for Ansible Navigator itself. So for us, we recommend you to create a directory where you can place all these artifacts and the logs as well. If not, every time you run, right, it's going to create a new artifact every time you run, and your whole folder will be in a way populated with all these artifacts. So we recommend to put it in a place where you can curate as well as host all these artifacts in. So I just place it in a random directory that I just created with all the artifacts inside. So what the artifacts allows you to do is allows you to in a way look back at what has been ran, what was the output as well. So it's much more easier to see and um, get back all these different tasks that has been run previously. Okay. Uh, okay. So now with Navigator, right? As well Navigator as well. What you can do is that you can open for example, if I were to run this playbook itself, right? And then I want, let's say, to open the output on, for example, on the VS Code, right? It's something that you can do as well. So what I need to do first is that I need to first enable the editor, right? So this is one of the parameters that is needed. Putting console in terms of the console as false, and then this is the command to push it to the VS Code itself. So save this. I will do a next. Table again. Okay. I will go into for example, this is too much, right? Maybe I want to push it to here instead, right? I will just do a colon, open. Okay, this is sorry, I was in another file. Okay, my bad. Now you know why now you know that this is live. Okay, so let me run it again. Yeah, so you can put multiple Ansible Navigator YAML files if you have different kind of configurations in different folders. So it works the same as the Ansible config files, where if you want different kind of configurations for different folders. So I was in a different folder, so it wasn't working. Okay, it works now. Right, so I'll just open it. So you can see here is pushed to the VS Code itself, right? So that is another way if you want to open up for example, the output into an editor of your choice, right? Just now you open in the console, right? If you want to open in VS Code, like VS Code, right, then you can do that as well. So these are things that you can do with Ansible Navigator. Okay, so now, right, Ansible Navigator, as I mentioned, we're going to use execution environments today to run it as a container. So right now it's not running as a container, right? It's just running as it is, right? So if I were to go back, as you can see here, I already put in the parameters for the execution environment parameters. So container engine, right? I'm using Podman, right, to run it as a container. The image itself, I am getting from the automation hub that I have within my environment today. This image, you can point it to any repository that has this particular supported image, or the image that you want to run it from. So in this case, I'm using a execution environment that is a Rail execution environment, right, that contains a lot of the I would say the really contains some of the modules within the Ansible core itself. So we have three different execution environment, right? One is the this a more fatter, I think, bigger image, right, which contains more modules. The other one we have is a minimal execution environment, right? If you want something a bit more smaller in size, and then the last one we have is a Ansible 2.9 as an execution environment, right? If you want something that is a bit more of a backport compatibility for the other playbooks that you're running within Ansible 2.9 today. So I will run it, right? Or enable it as true. Save it. Then I will go to my ping test itself, right? I'm going to add in this delay, right? So because the ping itself is going to be very fast, right? It's going to be a ping and then it'll come back with a response. And when you run it as a container, what it does is it spins out the container, and once it's done executing, right, it will actually destroy itself, right? So I'm going to put a timer so that I can show you guys that it's running as a container within Podman itself. So run this. Okay, so before that, change this to okay. This is where the repository is. It's under our registry.redhat.io, and I'm just pointing to the image itself. So I'm just checking the images. I see that it's already there. Let me show you. So both the okay. So I just remove it. So if what you can do is there are two options, right? You can do here. One is right to pull the image directly from registry.io. Let me see, do I need to log in? First. Okay. Let me pull. So one way is that you can pull down the registry and then run it subsequently. right? So what it does is that Podman will actually try to find whether you have the registry already available within Podman itself. So if not, actually what you can do is if you have already configured this here, right, you can actually do a run, right, of the playbook, and it will automatically also pull down the image for you, right? So right now I'm just doing the first option to show you that it will pull down the image. Okay, it's done. So it should be, oops, to be inside, right? So I'll just do an Ansible Navigator run. So it's already there, right? So if I split the terminal, right, maybe I can do a command. Right? So you can see, right, it is running, right? The pod is running, right? And once this thing times up, right, you can see that the container will spin down itself. So this is how the execution environment is being run, right, with the images, right, sorry, with the playbook. So let me see, is it? Right, so it's gone already. So it's time out, right? So it's completed. So let me escape this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, right, okay. So now we see, that we can pull down, right, images and run the image with the the execution environment with the playbooks itself. Um, Another thing that you can do is, right, you can point to a particular, for example, your automation hub. So in this case, this is my URL, right, that I have. So you can pull from the automation hub as well, right? There's no issue, right? So if I to run it, right, it's going to pull from the automation hub itself and then run it. So my automation hub has the image already inside. So maybe I later I'll show you the automation hub. See, so in this case, how do you how do you do the configuration, right? The configuration itself, the configuration itself is done via the etc containers, right? Containers, registries. So because for me, I'm running in the insecure, right, there's no TLS, right? So I'm putting under insecure. But definitely, if you have a CA cert, right, and then you can put it um, under this group itself. So you will first check for at the registry.ss, right, and then registry.red.io and then docker.io, right. So these are things that you can add on in terms of the registries if you are using an external registry from Automation Hub itself. Okay, so now let me then share the Automation Hub. So I can see that for me, oh sorry. Yeah, so you can see that the images is here, right? So there's a container registry that you can put inside here. Then you can also push other execution environments here as well. Okay, I think now I will pass it on to Anthony to show the builder portion.
Thanks, Derek. So I will just take over screen sharing. So I guess right, you do need a container registry. So I think what Derek was showing basically is that if you use Automation Hub, you can use that as the container registry. If not, you can do what we are doing. For instance, in Quay, you can actually put the images over here. For instance, the stuff that I'm going to show you later on, it's with this GCP collection, right? So ultimately, you do the tagging and everything, it will still work. Obviously, Quay can help you to do security scan as well, right? So that could be something that you can consider. But by and large, right, I'm not sure whether you guys are familiar with the concept of builder, but if not, you can actually look at this blog that kind of goes through, what builder is. If you have used, Docker build or Podman for building images, the concept is actually very similar, right? So if you go through all these things, it tells you like what are the stuff that you can do. And the example that we are going to do today basically is that we have a few things that we define, right? So for instance, the dependencies, we were saying something like we can allow it for RPM and dpkg, right, for both the Ubuntu as well as the RHEL platforms. Then the other stuff that we actually put over here will be things like the execution environment itself. As Derek has mentioned, right, we do have a couple of images that you can use. In my case, I'm trying to build something that is the smallest possible size. So I start with the minimal RHEL image that we will be using over here, right? So that is my base image, basically. And then I define my dependencies, right, which basically you have a few things, right? So this is the system one, and the ones that is inside the requirements.txt will be the binaries that is needed. So for people who have been, we will post it on YouTube for the recording, right? So for people who have been using Tower in the past or are still using Tower, right? You probably are aware that you have this concept of virtual environment. So you kind of want to make sure that all the required Python binaries are also built into the container image that we will be using, right? Then the requirements YAML itself basically will store the collections that is needed in order for you to run the whole thing, right? And then obviously you can have some other additional steps, right? It's actually very similar to what was mentioned over in this slide that we were showing, right? So you can see that we have the UBI 8, and on top of that, you have the core, the libraries, as well as the collections. So ultimately, what's going on over here is that you have the collections, it goes inside, and then we build the final image itself. So if you were to look back at what we have over here, we basically use the same kind of concept, right? So the next thing that we want to look at, obviously, will be the text. So I'm doing something on the Google Cloud, right? So I just wanted to make sure that I have the minimal number of stuff inside so that the image size is kept small, right? So if you were to look at documentation, you will see that these are the two mandatory packages, right? The Google Auth as well as request, right? So then there's the requirements and we just put it in. And the YAML itself, obviously, these are the certified collections that is coming from our partners, GCP in this case, right? So if you define this, with all these things all done, and you define all these environments itself, all that you have to do with the build itself is you kind of say that, okay, I'm going to build based on the information that's provided here. You can see there's a context folder basically that's used for the building itself, right? Then you will tag it, right? And then verbosity, I'm setting it to 3 so that we can see what's going on, right? So we kind of built it already, right? Because we know that we are kind of short of time as well today. So you will see that this thing goes through pretty fast. But if you were to build it on your own, it may take up to 3-5 minutes, depending on what you're packaging into the image, right? So you can see that once it is built, right, you will be able to see it by typing Podman images, right? So this thing will get built over here, right? And you have the relevant tagging, right? So this is actually where my automation hub is sitting. So you have a few places that you can push it to. Obviously, you can push it to Quay, like what I was showing, or you can push it to Automation Hub, like what Derek was showing earlier, right? And the base of which, in my case, I'm using the minimal rel to build. And after which it's just log into the registry and then pushing it. And obviously, if you want to run it, it will be very similar to what we can do with the Hello World stuff. It basically uses the image that we are running over here, right? That is basically what this whole thing is doing. So it's running this thing, and if you were to look at this, you can see that it's using the GCP collection image that we have to run this particular container, as in the playbook that we are running. And just like what Derek has shown, you can easily drill down into the different tasks. Over here, I'm just letting it sleep for 2 minutes, right? So pretty much, you can see that we have a way to build the image. We have a way to push it to Quay, to Automation Hub, depending on what you want as your external registry, right? It can also be Docker Hub, for instance, right? Doesn't really matter. It can also be something, one of the customers was asking for their Azure systems, right? So if you have something in Azure, you can definitely put it inside there. It's not an issue. And you can actually integrate as a whole pipeline as well if you want to, right? So those are the things that can happen. You know, after building an image, basically is using it to do the automation that's needed. And we try to keep the image size as minimal as possible, in line with the good practices. And yeah, I guess that's about all that I wanted to show for the builder piece. The rest of the stuff, Derek has pretty much covered, especially those things around how we can, you know, use the Navigator to run all the playbooks. So these are the two things that we wanted to show today. We will talk about more on the controller itself, which kind of looks like this, right? You know, these are the images, right? So you can see Derek mentioned about the 2.9, the default execution plane, the control plane, and then the minimal, right? So we will talk more about this in the next session, whereby we'll just go through how that new interface looks like. Any questions from anyone?
Actually, I have too many questions, but I will catch up later. How to drop off. Okay, where is the Ansible.cfg? I mean, at this point of time, Derek, in your environment?
My Ansible configuration, I didn't do anything because it didn't require me to for example place an inventory, point to a certain inventory or any other configurations. It's just a very simple ping test locally. So the conditions or anything, the parameters still applies, right, in terms of how you create your configurations files today, right? So each folder, if you want to be more granular in terms of how you want to configure things, it is still the same way how you do it today.
There is not much difference, right? So the Ansible CFG in this case, like I'm saying that I point to my local inventory, right? Because I'm trying to do something to the Linux RHEL instance that I have. And then my inventory file, it's also very simple, very similar to what we have always been using, right? So no difference, right? Okay. So those are the things that you can still do. Obviously, the main difference is what Derek has shown with the Navigator, whereby you know, like over here, I'm setting the image to whatever that I've built locally, right? And you have a way to specify where you want to send the logs out, and the other things that you want to change, right? So those are things that can happen. You know, it's not very different. It's just that, I mean, the core concepts are the same. It's just that the architecture has changed. We make it more container and cloud native from a design perspective.
Okay, so basically, I mean, I haven't installed yet. So installation means just download and install straight away, just like the Ansible Tower, right? Or something different.
Yeah, so
It's-
so
Mm,
so
go
yeah,
ahead.
there's many ways you can install all these common components. It's all upstream, right? If you want to use, if you are a current customer of ours, right, with the subscription itself does come with all these packages inside.
Mm,
So you can just utilize our subscription, and then you can get all these things within that subscription itself. If you want to set it on your own, right, it's all within upstream, right? You can find it there.
all right,
So
all right.
you can have this as well. It's still the same setup script that you're using. It's just that the inventory will look a bit different.
Okay. All right. I have to drop off. Thank you
Okay.
anyway.
Take your
Okay,
time.
I will catch up you later.
So yeah, Shinjit
you.
here from Bosch.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we are currently using Ansible Tower. Okay, so I understand that we will not be using isolated node, right? In the new setup. So
The
probably
new setup has the idea of automation mesh.
Yeah,
It's
automation
just
mesh.
that it is not GA. It's going to GA in half a month
Okay.
time.
So probably if we have some, we need some consultation, something like, then probably we can contact you, right?
Definitely, right?
Okay.
Feel free to reach out to us.
Okay, because we are using Tower in our production environment, yeah. So we are experienced.
Correct.
We have good experience with Tower, but yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So when will be the next session? Like within a month? Or?
We want. I think we are planning to conduct it maybe towards end of November or third week, and hopefully once that is or once Ansible 2.1 has maybe GA, right, then maybe we can show something by then.
Yep.
Hopefully, right? Hopefully we can show something.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll have a third one, as what
Sure.
I mentioned at the start, that it's going to happen middle of December, before the holidays, where we will invite our business unit to be on a call as well, so you can ask any questions.
Okay.
We will try to answer.
Okay, because just one thing, generally most of the people are away in December.
Correct.
Probably
Yes.
that call probably can we put it in January, then it will be more.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
we can do that as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, is there any online lab or a demo lab available so that we can go and create a practice use like for learning purpose?
So what we can say is that there are plans, right? There are plans to have some, I think, small labs, demo labs that the community can use, can play with. So do look out for that. We will update in the next sessions once that is up and running. I know that there are plans, but we are unsure if it's ready yet. So
I'll post a link, right? So it's called the self-paced lab. We are trying to do something like learn.openshift.com, whereby you can actually get to test it out, right? So that you get to learn, for instance, with the Navigator and all those stuff. So this is basically what we have. I posted the link. You can kind of test it with those things.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's what exactly I was looking for.
Correct. Go for that. It's a way to get started.
Yeah,
and we do have other new revamped training, right? With something that our BU has created as well. We're trying to get more people to.
I'm kind of I'm very new to this, and yeah, I would like to start from the beginning, maybe very basics.
Yes. So this 0.007 basically it doesn't cost you anything, so you can try.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thanks for the links. I will take a look.
Yep. Right. the hands-on piece as well, right? So it's basically the 2 links that I've shared. I think it's a good starting point. Right. If there's no questions, we will see you guys next time.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
sure.
you.
Hey,
Yeah,
thank you
thanks
so
for
much.
your-
Yeah,
yeah.
it was a great session.
Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thanks.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye.
We'll post a link for
Sure.
the recordings.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.